Thank you for welcoming me to NOAA event. It's a great pleasure for us of Renctas to be joining you today. Renctas is a conservation-based organization in Brazil. So we have been working against wildlife trafficking for more than 20 years. So I'll be sharing with you guys a brief presentation, an overview of the work we have been doing, and in that you guys will be knowing about more deep information on wildlife trafficking and conservation issues, mainly in the Amazon region and here in South America. So we briefly share a presentation so that you guys can have this overview. Is it working well? Okay, fine. So once more, good afternoon to you all, and good morning to those who are in another time zone as myself, such as myself. So again, it's a really great pleasure to be here talking to you. So I thank you a lot for that. Renctas was established in 1999. So with an environment that in Brazil there was barely no other NGO working against the wildlife trafficking. So we happened to have worked out the first organized effort and even an organization to work against this illegal wildlife trade. There was no organized effort, even in in governmental organizations, no such kinds of operations or departments that aimed at tackling this illegal activity. The first efforts were organized in cooperation with us there in the beginning of this movement that we have started in the beginning of this decade of this the 20th century, right? 21st century. So we have then at that time published the first national report on the trafficking of wild animals. And it was the most important document that contained systematized info in the subject in Brazil. We have then trained thousands of agents working with capacity building across all governmental organizations in Brazil, which happen to have a few. Some are national and others working in subnational states. Another milestone in our history was the holding of the first South American conference on the illegal wildlife trade, supported by the U.S. State Department, that influenced a lot the way that other South American countries reacted to this issue too, and that brought Renctas expertise to be applied across the entire continent, such as in Argentina and Bolivia, another border countries to Brazil. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the wildlife trafficking here, so that you can take an overall look and an understanding of how deep and how complicated this situation is. So the wildlife trafficking has some peculiar characteristics when what pertains to Brazil. So from the total amount of animals seized and illegally traded, we have an estimate that about 38 million animals are being withdrawn from nature in Brazil every year. On the first Wildlife Trafficking Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry of the Brazilian National Congress, which we also happen to have been a counselor at Renctas, estimated that in the researching team that about 60 million ornamental fish were being taken away from Amazonian rivers to South Asian countries annually. So that means each year 60 million ornamental fishes were being removed So that is really a huge number. So differently than some African countries, the wildlife trafficking in Brazil involves a huge diversity of species for many purposes. So the trade is focused on a wide range of different animals rather than only focusing on some targeted flagship species. So in Brazil, it is very common for people in general to have wild animals as pets. So not even it's even worth mentioning too how intrinsically connected to other criminal activities such as drug trafficking and others wildlife trafficking is here. Um, okay, so we have been also working deeply in the internet, which is a new showcase for wildlife traffickers, as you almost know. And it's very interesting to give you a brief overview of how that is working for renters. Well, the legal wildlife trade in Brazil currently accounts for about uh, uh, 70% of all illegal trading of wildlife being done in the internet. So the rest is in open markets or interstate highways or some focus points. But the main part of it, 70%, is being held in the internet. So there are secret groups, secret and closed networks with a very restricted access, using codes for communicating with each other that we call some type of wildlife trafficking dialect, which you happen to have to understand well to be able to be across it and whistleblow and denounce them to authorities. It's important emphasizing how it is for these traffickers to dissimulate. It's very easily for them to do so, to conceal the information, close communication channels, and opening other new ones. And that also is being done by them with prepaid numbers, which turns it even more difficult for us to be tracking. So on that scenario, um, we have main difficulties such as the volume and the amount of information that is gathered, the lack of appropriate response from companies responsible for for the formation and creation of this virtual platforms. There is a very lack of support from their side in this sense in general. Not absolutely, but in general, we lack their support a lot for doing so. The fact that Brazilian legislative is barely pursuing any efforts to be dealing with the issues daily. So we can barely count the number of wildlife traffickers in your hand that are behind bars. That's very rarely. Some time ago, there was only one because he had committed a crime which was associated to other financial crimes, such as falsifying documents. And therefore, because of that, he was then imprisoned, but that is not very often that it happens. So an overview of Renctas online monitoring is a very important thing to give in this presentation because this is how it materializes the work that we have been doing daily. So we have been monitoring approximately 700 WhatsApp groups plus 1,000 profiles in community groups on Facebook and other hundreds secret forums. We received around 15,000 messages containing selling and trading advertisements daily. So that means a huge, very huge number. We already have a database with 7 million from these messages, still not analyzed due to its volume. So we have just published also a very interesting article on the subject on the biological conservation magazine. And I will talk to the hosts. How can I share that link with you guys? So I believe that's very important, very fresh information on the wildlife trafficking in Brazil via social media mainly. So I'll be talking to the host. How can I share that info with you?
Thiago, if
For
you have
finishing the
almost
presentation,
reached the end of your slot, so if you could kindly, yeah, summarize
sure.
your last couple
Thank
of
you.
points. Thank you.
So for ending the presentation, it's very important to emphasize that recently we have denounced 3.5 million messages to the Brazilian public authorities belonging to the Brazilian Public Prosecutor's Office. So we can, with this monitoring, have an understanding of the most targeted species up to date, the main routes and whereabouts, the main market prices, the traders' strategies, like the wildlife traffickers' modus operandi. That's why I invite you to get in contact with us. And thank you a lot, Noah.
Thank you, Thiago, for being with us today.